direction. Doug,
Yeah.
how you doing, my brother? How you doing, man? I was gonna go ahead and tell everybody where we've been for the last few days and how today has been, but I'll let you go ahead and start with that.
I'm delirious. I'm so tired. I'm delirious. Yeah, we were in Texas,
Hmm.
trying to remember where we were. Rio Grande Valley.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah, yeah. We were
it's
out
by the
there
border.
for it's by the border. We were real close to Mexico. We were Rio Grande Valley 911 conference. Again, in very South Texas. Just an amazing conference out there. They had us to come out there and be one of the exhibitors. We met some really great people out there. uh, I don't know, probably 300 or so, maybe people. I mean, that room was pretty
Yeah,
big, so about
yeah.
300 people came to see a couple of our people speak. A couple of our friends. Chris Fields is one of our brothers. He was up there presenting, and then Brock Bevel, another guy present. So it was good that they were both up there and they did a great job. I think people were impacted by their stories and the stories of resilience. So that was great. They had a lot of nice resources there. We made some really good connections while we were there with some people around Texas and their peer support connections and their crisis teams, and it's just really good conference. So really impressed with them. Maribel and her team just do an amazing job. This is their third annual, and it's gotten better every year. So if you hear about it, try to attend. Next year. We'll definitely be there. It's definitely just it's worth going. When you're talking about resources, they're just a really nice conference, up and coming conference. So, yeah, so we had to fly into McAllen uh, Airport, which again is in South Texas, and it's not too far from there where the actual conference was. And then this morning we had to catch a flight that left McAllen at like 5:30 this morning. So we were up by like 3:30 this morning, and their times and an hour behind. So 3:30 this morning, and we've just kind of been up the whole time. So if we're dragging a little bit, please be patient with us. But brothers are trying to get it done, so be patient with us. And I
Trying
actually
to get we,
back home. He's getting ready for the PCIS down in Florida. So he's got that, I believe, tomorrow, right, Doug?
starts in the morning. Yeah.
Starts in the morning, yeah. So he'll be down there for a few days. I'm actually in Washington, D.C. So we flew the first leg together, and then we split up. So and I had to, it's just one of the rare times I had to take three flights to get to D.C. So that's a Delta thing. But so finally got here and literally made us shove some food down my throat and getting on online, man. So here we are doing our thing, and thank you to and Chris Scallon. He's doing okay, but he's out in Alaska right now. He's teaching class up there. If he gets off, he'll jump on if he can. But he's up there teaching, and it's uh, the Power and Peers class. So that class finishes when it finishes. It's not an exact 9 to 5 type thing. So when they finish doing what they're doing and then kind of critiquing the day and then making plans for the next day, just kind of happens when it happens. So he's good. I know you're doing good up there. So good deal. Marky, thank you for everything you're doing and getting us and keeping us on point here because we damn sure need it, man. So matter of fact, she's sending me stuff right now. So okay, cool. So Doug, did I miss anything so far? All right, man. So
I'm hanging on, bro. I'm hanging on by a dear thread.
today we're talking about the power of listening, man, and crisis communication for first responders. And probably one of the hardest things to learn. And let me explain what I mean there. As cops, man, we have most of us all our careers. What do? We go places and we fix things. We got to go someplace. Uh, and you go up to some people, and inside of 3 sentences, you've kind of got a good feel of what's going on. They give you 3 sentences, and you already know which way it needs to go. So we as first responders go to start fixing it. We go ahead and start directing what needs to happen to get us to Z, to get to the end point and get everybody there safely, right? And it's just what we do throughout our careers. We come in, we assess, and we fix. And the assessment has to be quick. We ain't got a whole lot of time to just sit there and listen to 2 hours and 3 hours. We got to kind of do this in 15, 20 minutes because we got to go ahead and start the path of going on to the right direction. We got a report we got to write, and there's more calls holding. So we do this stuff pretty quick. So uh, when I tell first responders, when I tell people that are dealing with others in crisis, it should be more listening than you talking. You imagine the kind of response I get. Does that make sense to you, Doug?
Yeah, yeah. Listening. Uh, Sometimes, Chris, what does Chris use the term ministry of presence?
Hmm.
That's what Chris uses that term. And he says sometimes the best conversation you can have is one that you don't say anything, just being there, listening to the person and letting them. And we learn that on the job. Sometimes people just want to be heard and they just, they just want you to listen to them. Sometimes you don't have the answer, and that's okay.
That's okay. That's
And
right.
that's okay not to have the answer because what I've learned in this journey all these years is there really is no answer.
Hmm.
There is no one definitive answer is the term I should use. And it's difficult and you have to learn sometimes you just don't have the answer for that person, but listening to them and just being there is powerful enough in itself.
Yeah, I think, and so what you're talking about, the first thing I think is venting, right? Like we know and we do learn that right on the road that sometimes we gotta let people just kind of get that first barrage out and that first kind of wave out and let them vent, right? And that's great. And we do that pretty good. We're pretty good at, but even again when we're on the street and we're as first responders, there's a limit to that, right? And that's okay. We get it, but we got to let people vent. And that's when you're talking about somebody in crisis, it's a little more than that, right? And you already hit it on the head. The power of just kind of being there and present, that's huge. That's the very first thing. I'm here for you, and you gotta you gotta mean what you say. I'm here to listen to you. So not just letting them vent, but actively listening to the person, uh, and taking it in. The big thing that we're taught, and I've been taught this, a few times, but when you go to any kind of peer training, the big thing they to tell you is, you know, as soon as they finish or that first wave, that second wave, the best thing for you to do is to kind of regurgitate what they've said, paraphrase it, but just say, so what you said is that you woke up this morning really early and caught a plane and you've been up wee hours in the morning and you're running on fumes. And while you may have said, 5 minutes of stuff, I paraphrase it, but now I'm listening to you. You
Yeah.
know I'm listening because I paraphrase what you just said, right? And so, and then sometimes it's just that letting them know you're listening by giving those, just I understand. I hear you, and letting them kind of keep going, but always, kind of checking in with them that you have not just checked out in the middle of what they're saying, right? So you've got to actively listen. And another one of the things that we were taught is like, don't do what I have a bad habit of doing. And I think first responders all the time, right? And you know this, Doug. When we're talking to each other, how many times I look over your shoulder? I'm looking left, I'm looking right, and just part of kind of how we're trained and what we do. Uh, you can't do that when you got somebody in crisis. You need to pay attention
Yeah.
to what's being said. So there's things that kind of contradict some of the training that we've gotten over the years and the habits that we've built up. They kind of contradict, actually listening. Listening. I mean, what do you think about that?
No, you're absolutely right. There is a fine line between listening and listening. And
Right.
in this, now we're talking, and it's very difficult. I was always impressed. I've always been impressed by the police officers I've worked with in my career. I've worked with, which I feel some of the greatest on the planet. And I've always been impressed, but I was always impressed by the firefighters when they're medics where we live, where Raul and I live. Every firefighter is a paramedic, and into the room. And it was amazing how they could be doing blood pressures and all that fancy medical stuff and not even looking at the other guy and talking to him and saying things. That mass confusion. That's impressive. But we're speaking about mental health and we're talking about trauma and things of that nature. And that is you have one shot at
Mm-hmm.
this. I truly believe if you're in that crisis moment, I revert to God. Please God, please, because I say the dumbest shit on the planet. It's just anybody who knows me knows the weird stuff that comes out of my mouth. But in those moments, I always beg God for mercy and say, please give me the right thing to say to this person. Because if you say the wrong thing, and how I know this is because this has happened to me in the past. My, I was struggling. I failed to tell anybody that I was struggling. And then the thing that I was struggling the most with, my teammates, they were punking me out about it. They were making fun of me, showing me they love me in a bad time. This is when I broke my back. I'll just tell it. When I broke my back, I lived on the high of being the Ironman triathlete. And that was my thing, at work. That's all I did. And so when I broke my back, I couldn't stand up. So I was kind of bent over at a 45, and I walked funny. I looked like a little mini gorilla, the way I was bent over and the guy started calling me the Tin Man. I'm the Tin Man, just punking me out. This is SWAT. So there was no, the rules of SWAT. What state happens in SWAT stays in SWAT. And so anyway, they were doing that to me, and it broke the straw. How do you say that? The straw. That was the
So that
straw.
broke the camel's back. Yeah.
Yeah, that was the straw. And so the blame was on me because I failed to tell them, hey guys, I'm really struggling with this. And they failed in a sense of not pulling me aside. I think I've learned this,
Hmm.
pulling them aside and going, hey, are you okay?
Right.
Are you doing okay with all this? And so I say all that to say that you have that one moment because especially police officers, we're just guilty of this. When a fellow cop gets in trouble or does something wrong or has a hiccup or something happens, we pounce on that freaking cop like a freaking tiger. We
Yeah.
just pound them into the ground
Mhm.
and we don't really think of our actions and what they can lead to. So it is really, really important that you say the right thing and you listen. So you actively listen, and then and if you don't have the right thing to say, sometimes saying nothing is better than saying something stupid.
Yeah, so I'm gonna go off and I'm gonna expound on the first thing you said about, you have one shot at this. So important. So important. It's a very important statement because we all know what it took for that person to talk to you, to raise their hand and say, I need this kind of help. There's something going on up here and I need help with it. I need to talk about this. That took an amazing amount of courage for any first responder to say that. So when they've gotten to that point, and this is, anywhere, when they've gotten to that point where they finally decided they need to get some help and they've taken some action towards it, you know, if we squander that window will slam shut so quick, and now that person's back on that cycle, of whatever is bad in their life, and they just say they don't know a way out. They just tried, and we didn't listen, right? So, and if that person is coming to you or somebody and they're talking, they've got a little bit of trust in that person. They've got a little bit of trust in that person that they finally, Raul finally comes to Doug. I've got to have some trust in you to come to you, raise my hand, and say, this is what I need to talk about what's going on in my head. There's got to be a big, an inkling of trust there, and then it's going to be up to that person that's being talked uh, to build on that trust. And I think being the person that just kind of listens, right, and does the work of uh, actively listening is going to build that trust, and hopefully, we're not shutting that window. We're keeping that thing going. And I'm just going to throw a bunch of stuff out here, and more especially, from my experience, I've got to be careful of my tone and the words that I may use, right? So we just got that's exactly where I'm going. Somebody just commented, got to be careful in using words I understand. If you have not been, if you really haven't been through what that person is talking about, don't say I understand, right? So absolutely, and I always say like, be truthful. I mean, don't go there bullshit anybody, because if you do that, we will read through it.
Yeah.
So you've got to be truthful. And if somebody comes to you and they're saying something that you haven't dealt with, it's okay. But you're there, you're listening to them, and again, it's more about the presence at that point. You're actively listening, and then it's okay to say, "Hey, I've not been through that, but I can only imagine," and you know, then walk with them hand in hand. If you're not the person they need to speak to, or somebody, or get them into a resource, but that's okay. It's okay to do all that. What you don't want to do is say, "That's not that bad.
Yeah.
Calm down." Holy shit! Imagine that.
You
Imagine
must
if
be
you told
crazy.
somebody. Imagine if you told. Imagine if somebody told you, Doug, "Not that bad."
Yeah.
What are you so upset about?
Yeah.
Come on. I mean, how would that go over?
Yeah, I've been told that. Yeah,
Right?
I've been told. I've been told quit being a whiny bitch. Things like that. And yeah, those are tough pills to swallow, but we come from a different lane maybe.
Mhm.
Um, and sometimes those are hard things to hear, for sure. Yeah. But I I gotta think how I want to say this. Because that question, I remember one of the very first times, and it's shocking that I remember this, one of the first times I went to therapy. And you got to think like, Rob, you and I come from an era, there was no peer teams when we hit our bottom. There was no peer teams. I didn't even know what a peer team was. I've said that for years. But I remember the first time I said something, the person says, I understand. That was what that person just said in it. I understand. And I looked at him and I didn't say, I'm like, no, the fuck you don't.
Right.
Have you ever been? It's hard for a cop. I'm going to speak for a cop, but I'm sure it's the same thing for the fire guys and the COs and the dispatchers. I'm sure it's the same. It's really hard for somebody, especially I'm going to speak for a cop, to look at somebody and they go, "Yeah, I understand, I get it," and you've never put a bulletproof vest on to go to work. You in and I heard this from, and this would turn me off from therapy in the beginning because, oh, I know, I understand y'all. My husband's a veteran. Well, he's okay, but is he a cop? And you understand, oh, you went on a ride along. Oh, okay, you understand. You went on a ride along. You're culturally competent. And that messed with my head. Like I smell bullshit. That's how a cop thinks. They go right away into that mode of investigation. Kind of, we have to contradict ourselves because we've been told to be investigators and to listen and to draw facts. Now we have to give answers on a whole different level, on a mental level. And I'm sorry, I'm losing my train of thought. I'm so tired. I'm struggling with communicating. But anyway, I had to over time learn to trust Chris Scallon again, telling me, Doug, if you when you broke your back, what did you do? I said, man, went to the hospital, had surgery. He goes, yeah. He goes, did you care if the surgeon was culturally competent to operate on you? And I go, what do you mean? He goes, did you ask the surgeon that was going to fix you? Did you ask him if he had ever been a cop or been on ride-alongs? And that's when it hit me. Oh, okay. Hold on a second. He said, if you break your leg, Doug, you go to the doctor. You break your arm, you go to the doctor. You've heard him say this 100 times, Raul. You break your head, what do you do? And so we have to learn to trust out of our circle. I had to learn to trust out of our circle. Um, that a particular therapist that aggravated me with comments ended up becoming the person who would save my life, so to speak.
Mhm.
I get upset because I treated that person horribly. You know what I mean? Just in my thoughts and in the way that I thought about this person in the beginning. And that person was just generally trying to help. So the heart was there and the soul was there, but I wasn't there. So it comes with I'm getting at like a double-edged sword. To listen and to speak are very difficult things in this field to do. If I'm making sense,
Yeah,
really.
you are. You are. So when it's time to speak, we were talking about you got to be careful what you say. You can't bullshit a cop and start saying things like you understand, or if it's not true, or if you haven't been in that, and hopefully, when you're talking to somebody, you find other ways, other phrases that can just, hey, I can only imagine, that must weigh on your mind, and let's start, let's start talking about ways that we can start coping with this. Maybe there's somebody, a professional you can talk to. So there's different phrases you can use that don't sit there and put you in a spot where you're, saying I understand. And if it's not true, now don't get me wrong. If somebody's been through a shooting and you've been through a shooting and they're, going through some, they're saying some things to you, and hey, yeah, I understand that,
Yeah.
and that person, how I've been through that, and then focus back on, I still want to hear about you though. And that brings me to the next point, is that and this is where another one of the things that kind of happens a lot when you're talking to somebody about, uh, whether it be a career of stuff or just a critical, excuse me, a critical incident. um, you know I really don't care about the tactics. Don't care about the tactics. Um, I care about how you feel about what happened. I care about how it's making you feel. So the tactics don't matter, and that and I'm saying that generally because it may be an instance where it does, right? But the tactics don't matter. We got to focus on how it's making that person feel, right? Because I say that because, uh, and don't get me wrong, you may have to find out some of the tactics, and so it may overlap a little bit just because they're giving you the story for context wise, but we're not really focused on that part about it. We're focused on how to make you feel. So and sometimes we get confused in that, or we get caught in the whole tactic part of it because it's what we do, right? We look at tactics. We're always trying to critique ourselves. We're type A personalities, especially when you're talking to guys that may be in specialized or tactical teams, or whatever or investigative teams. So we're not really, and I'll say the same thing in reference to, I just use tactics, but the same thing, it may be an investigation. Not really worried about the investigation so much, just how it's making you feel, right? And again, that may overlap a little bit because uh, we need to know what's going on for context a little bit. So we may have to know a little bit about the investigation, a little bit about the tactics, but it's more about getting the person to kind of open up and seeing which direction we're going to go in. And the only way to do that, again, is to be active in the listening. So does that make any sense there?
Yeah. Yeah. It's difficult to it's difficult to listen when you're struggling too. And I just had this conversation in Texas with that gentleman from the Texas Peer Network, Mike.
Yeah, yeah,
We
yeah.
just had this exact conversation and how difficult it is in certain moments to listen to people and to say the right things, no matter what your background is. I was always scared
Mm-hmm.
to be a peer later
Right.
in my career, like now. I was always scared of that. I wasn't comfortable. I wasn't the huggy, touchy type person. I thought that was the type of person that needed to be given advice. And I've learned over the years that just sitting in with somebody sometimes is just just being there. So I'm going to jump off course a minute. When you're struggling, you're alone. You can be in a room full of 50 people when you're struggling and never feel so alone in the planet. Like it's a very lonely feeling to be in that. And it's amazing when somebody can connects with you. And what I'm getting at is we push this narrative in the industry, and I think it's a great thing. I'm not saying it's a bad thing of talk to your peers and peer teams and things like that. But some people just aren't comfortable with that.
Yeah.
And I'll use an example. They put somebody in an agency and they put them in charge of their wellness unit and their peer team. And the person in this agency had a horrible background,
Mm-hmm.
infidelity things, backstabbing in the agency, things of that nature. So clearly the trust factor wasn't there. And so sometimes you'll have that situation. So maybe that isn't the answer. But it, if you're a police officer, for example, and you need to speak to somebody and you're not comfortable with the peer, that's okay. Your dog might be the best thing you can talk to. Your spouse. Your spouse should be the if you have a spouse or a significant other, they should be the number one person that you talk to, period. I've had to learn that the hard way over all the years. Even when I met Karen, she had to teach me how to communicate. because I just didn't know how to communicate. Um, and and what's funny about that is, and you've heard me tell this story. I was in such a deep, dark, lonely hole, and I knew it. And I knew, and I saw my life spiraling down, and I saw it coming to an end. And I remember getting on my hands and knees and begging God one night for mercy. I'm sure I was drunk too, and in one of the moments, but I'm on my hands and knees and I said, God, please just send me somebody to talk to. I'm lonely. I don't have anybody. I didn't trust anybody. That's another factor when you're struggling. You don't trust people. And Karen walked into the police department lobby the next day, and I've been with her ever since. So sometimes, it might look a little different for you, but you generally you have to find that connection. I'm coming from the other end. I'm not coming from the speaker. I'm coming from the person in crisis. If you're that person in crisis, you've got to find a connection, whether it's spiritual, whether
Mhm.
it's personal, whether if it's outside the agency, it's in your inner, maybe your what would you call that? Your circle outside of work, your personal circle, your social circle, things like that. But you've got to have somebody that you can connect with and somebody that you can talk with. Or sometimes just being around the right person is the answer.
Right.
I have these buddies who call me and they're bitching and moaning about their relationships, and I go, well, where'd you meet her? Oh, at the club, at the bar, at the local dive bar. And I always use this terminology. I'm not bashing people who've met their loved ones in bars, but I use this analogy. I go, bro, if you go looking in garbage cans, what you gonna find? And they go trash. I go, exactly. And I'm not saying about spouses, but you got to be very careful of who you when you're in that bad moment, who you're getting your advice from, who
Right.
you're speaking, who you're putting yourself around, because those things could be catastrophic. You
Yeah.
just it's like pouring fuel on the fire. And so which is opposite of how I was in the beginning, I always revert to the professionals. Listen, a therapist, that
Mhm.
is their job. They
Right.
just like they call 911 for you to come out. Now it's your turn to call 911 and they're showing up and they're professionals and this is what they do. This is they're trained in it. And I'm going to use this thing again, the trauma on a scale of 1 to 10. Everybody's heard me that's heard my presentation, heard me tell this. When you go to the doctor's office or you go to an ER room, you will see on the wall, they will have 10 smiley faces on the wall. One being the smiling, and number 10 being the red, angry face. And they walk into the room and they go, what's your pain level at? And you're supposed to be like an 8 or a 7 or whatever. And I looked at that picture for several weeks in my life one time, and then it hit me one day. It never said if you're a cop. It just said on a 1 to 10, a 10 is a 10.
Mhm.
And that's what they're trained at. And you don't always have to have somebody. If you're a firefighter, you don't always have to have a firefighter to talk to. If you're a dispatcher, same thing. Cop, same thing. You just got to have the right person to connect with or the right thing. Not everybody needs, some people have the gift of just going into meditation. Some people have the gift of going into prayer and it fixes all their problems. I don't have that ability, so I need a whole team of people to talk at me and keep me in the straight line. So I'm rambling, but
No, you're
I
good, man.
keep
You're good. I
trying to
think the
stress that importance of finding the right person to talk
yeah,
to.
and find the right person. That person uh hopefully understands that, you got somebody in crisis or just needing to talk and needing to get some stuff off their chest, needing resources, needing you to be that person to bring the temperature down, bring the stress level down just a little bit. right? Just a little bit to let them get to the next minute, right? And then the next hour, hopefully the next day. And then we're walking hand in hand with them doing that. And and we're quoting Chris a lot here, but and I saw this in a movie with Billy Crystal. This is years ago, where he was a psychiatrist for the mob, and Robert De Niro was in it. And Robert De Niro was this mobster who was just having some mental issues, and he went to see Billy Crystal on the side, and he disguised it in a bunch of different ways. But in one of the sessions he had with him, he goes in there and starts talking to Billy Crystal, and Billy Crystal maybe asked him two questions, and the rest of the time, De Niro was just talking, answering himself, and at the end he's like, you you're good, you're good. And then Chris is like, that's the compliment you want,
Yeah.
as being that peer where hopefully you've listened in such a way that you really haven't said a whole lot. You haven't monopolized the conversation, but just enough, just a couple of little sprinkles here and there to get that person to say what they need to say, get it out, right? Bring the temperature down, a little bit less stress, and they walk away saying, damn, that Doug is good. And Doug, you probably said a total of two sentences, right? But they walk away saying, damn, that Doug is good. And you know what they're talking about? And I don't even notice that they're meaning this, but you listen to them and you were effective in your listening. And that's the goal of it, right? Is to be able to that person walk away knowing that you helped them a little bit, and that there's a little bit of light at the end of the tunnel.
Yeah.
I've got a path to go down, and I've got somebody I can talk to. And again, you see, what I'm saying talk to. So we're trying to get to the point where we can get people just to talk to us and be able to just listen and getting where you need to go. I'm trying to make sure I cover every Marky, our boss. She's kind of like a slave driver, man. She makes sure that we do everything right. But I already mentioned this, but the rushing to solutions, that's part of what we do as police. Yeah, I always go back to the domestic violence thing. How many times have we rolled up on a domestic violence call? And for firefighters, I'm sure they go to the same call every time, where, I don't want to say cat in the tree. That's that Chris feels gets mad when I talk about that damn cat in the tree. But uh
Chris always says, "Have you ever seen a cat in a tree? You ever seen a dead cat in a tree?"
yeah, that's what he says. You ever said dead cat in the tree? It'll get down, it'll get down. But man, we go to domestic violence calls, man, and we get it done quick, making an arrest, shooing them away, finding out there's PC or not. I mean, we get to the damn bottom of it quick, man. We find solutions quick, and we're not there when somebody's coming to you. They're not looking for an immediate, or you shouldn't be offering any immediate solutions. That's not that's not what we're there for.
Yeah.
We're there to support them. We're there to support them in trying to and help them through this thing, right? Not find any immediate solutions in the first conversation. And we talk about this, and me and you've talked about this, Doug, is that we've got to be careful to stay in our lane.
Yeah.
You know, as peer support people, you're not a trained therapist unless you are, right? But peer support folk, you're not a trained therapist. Be
See,
careful
it's
going.
in the
Be
name.
Yeah,
It's
right.
in,
So
how many times you heard me say that? It's in the name. I'll ask people, anybody in here got a peer support team? And everybody will raise their hand. I'll go, what does peer support mean? And nobody can ever answer the question. And I always tell them it's in the name.
support.
Peer support. Stay in your lane. And
in the
we've
lane.
noticed that problem.
Yeah,
Yes.
and we see it a little bit. And my worry in that is that, again, I think that comes a little bit because we're doing a little bit too much talking, right? When somebody comes to us, we do a little bit too much talking, and we start going down the path of providing or thinking we're providing therapy, or maybe mistakenly doing it, don't realize we're doing it. And there's a whole lot of issues that can happen with that. You start opening doors and you don't know how to close them. You ain't
Yeah.
trained in it. You ain't trained in it, right? So you got to really be careful about doing that. And to that, towards that, you got to be careful not to be aggressive. Don't be too damn pushy. Don't get too excuse me, don't get too pushy with what the things that you do say to the person.
Yeah.
This is absolutely a a gentle touch, and even the most gruff a person, our brother Richie doesn't get much gruffer than him. He's rough around the edges, right? But that dude knows, as rough as around the edges as he is, he knows how to talk to people, and he knows how to have that gentle touch that's needed, and understand that. And this is going to be, I think, true for everybody. If somebody comes to you, they know who you are. They know who you are. They know who you're not. So that nobody's going to Richie expecting to get real warm and fuzzy, cuddly. But he does know how to treat you the right way.
Yes, he does.
So that's the big deal. There is that, so a couple things there, but stay in your lane.
Some people need the gruff.
Yeah, yeah.
Some
I mean,
people need that.
people need a little bit, and because it's the same. You're not going to have uh, everybody go to the same person, because not everybody's going to want to talk to Doug. Not everybody's going to want to talk to Raul. Not, so they may want to talk to Richie. They may want to talk to me, not you, or vice versa. Whatever the case is, right? They kind of know what they're getting, but we have to be cognizant. You have to be cognizant to know that this takes a certain touch, and hopefully, you know, to stay to do more listening than you do talking.
Yeah.
What else you
I'm
got, man?
I'm enjoying listening right now
Oh,
because
okay.
I'm like I'm
Well, I mean,
I'm sitting here in my head going, I have to, I got 10 more minutes. I got to pack up and get ready to,
oh yeah, I know.
I'm,
But
I'm
well,
sitting
I
here.
mean, the big deal about this, and we'll wrap it up with this, man. But the big deal is that it's really, and I mean this with all due, but it's the hardest, easiest thing for us to do. Because
Yeah.
how it shouldn't be hard for us to just shut the hell up and
Yeah.
listen to somebody, right? That shouldn't be hard, but it's truly the hardest thing to do for us because
And,
we're authority figures.
and let me put this in there too. Well, you and I've spoken about this. When you're in that position and you're listening,
Mhm.
you have to be very careful with that because I always feel like I'm amazed by clinicians that deal with trauma victims all day, every day, because as you're listening to that trauma, you're absorbing their trauma and
Mhm.
you're just absorbing it and taking it on and taking it on. And that can be dangerous too. And that can be dangerous for peer teams. It could be, dangerous for a lot of people to absorb that trauma. So you got to be really careful of making sure that you're in a right place.
Mhm.
That you are in a good place, because it's really difficult to listen to somebody when you're struggling. Because that's when people call me when I'm having a bad. Like nobody ever calls me when I'm having a good day and I'm all fired up. Chris talks about this. Nobody calls at 12 in the afternoon. They call at 2 in the morning. 2 to 5 a.m. and or when you're having the worst day of your life. And so it's really difficult in those moments. And so you got to be careful with that. It's important because like we are, like I'd say, we're tired today. And I'm tired, so I'm concerned that I might say the wrong thing or I might not say it the right way. And so you have to really be cognitive. How do you say that word? It's
Cognitive. No, what are you trying to say? Conscious?
maybe one of
Okay.
those one of those con words that
Gotcha.
you've
Gotcha.
got to be really careful about that and be aware of that because man, that's such a slippery slope
Yeah.
that you can get yourself into. So
Sure. We got a couple of questions here. I'm going to try to go through some of these here. First thing, we got off on the side. Somebody just texted, have we ever they've been through group sessions and it supported them. Have you or I ever done group? And if so, what are our thoughts? Yeah, I've done group before. I think it has its place. Uh, I did group after, shoot, I had been going to therapy for about a year and a half before I first did my first group. So I had gotten some skills, and there's still some things I wouldn't talk about in the group. I think it had been different had I went to group sooner. But absolutely, group is something that has its place for most people. I think most people have a good experience in group sessions. It takes it takes a little getting used to, there's a rhythm to it. And that's the way I kind of say it. So yeah, I think it helps. I by and large have heard everybody say it helps. The PCISs that we do, that is a hybrid group, if you will. It's a big group session that kind of happens, and it is amazing when you see how that thing works. So, absolutely, I think groups help. So, Doug, you feel the same way?
yeah, I was thinking of the PCISs that we do. I mean, that's an all day event.
Yeah,
It's anywhere from 30 to 40 people telling their stories of what brought them to this place. And it's a long, taxing day. But what I've learned in this, I'm kind of trying not to laugh because I remember my first group, but it's the moment where you're in a room, and I think it's the first time you go, oh my goodness, I'm not the only one. Oh my
right,
God, are you kidding me? That happened to you too,
right,
right? My
yeah,
very first group that I went to was me, the undercover narcotics agent, in a group with 30 heroin addicts in a treatment center. That was my very first group. And I walked into that group going, WTF?
yeah, yeah.
Are you kidding me? And
Hmm.
before that group was over, I learned one of the most valuable lessons in my life that those heroin addicts, and I'm not bashing them by any means, they were just like me. They
Yeah.
just chose a different path to deal with their trauma. I
Mm-hmm.
went and it changed the way I did business on the streets,
Yeah.
changed the way I did things. But that was my first group setting. And I learned the most powerful thing in that group is, man, I'm not the only one, trauma on a scale of 1 to 10. A 10 is a 10. I learned that.
You brought something else up real quick. I'm not going to lose. I'm going to say judgment. I'm going to read these and I'm come back to it. Absolutely, the comments we're seeing here. Two of them basically saying that it's hard for us to shut up because we're
Yeah.
trained to be fixers. We're brought up to be problem solvers, right? So it's just really tough to kind of do that. I'm going to talk about really quick. I just heard this somebody in a group came out of the group thinking, man, I didn't want to say anything because uh, that person over there is really effed up. They're
Yeah.
worse than him. Basically minimizing their 10 because they think they heard a 15.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so what that brings me back to, because that's a whole different subject there. We can talk more about that later in that group setting, but in the peer setting and somebody talking to you and looking for your support, you have to be careful not to judge. Can't be any judgment there. Can't be any comparison there. There can't be any, wow, that is so messed up, or you're never going to recover, or man, why are you messed up about that? I did this, which was worse than that. You can't do any of that. There can't be any judgment. Can't be any of that. And lastly, the last comment that was there was that pay attention because sometimes peer support people need peer support,
Yeah,
right?
absolutely.
And I call it the wash off, right? So, and this is a constant battle of mine. And Doug will tell you, we get calls uh, pretty consistently throughout the week from different people around the country, and we do pretty good at listening and supporting and trying to find resources and that kind of thing. And I call it my wash off. I try to wash it all off every night. I try to, just kind of release that stuff every night. Uh, Sometimes it gets rough on me. Sometimes it's harder to wash off. Sometimes it sticks. And there's reasons for that. I've kind of been able to identify some of that, so I'm getting better at it. But it's tough, and yeah. So sometimes I'll make that phone call to Doug, or we'll have those conversations when we're traveling, and I'll say, hey man, it's been deep. It's been a deep week. Or he'll just ask me the question because he knows I'm just ain't looking the same way. I'm not talking the same way. Are you okay? So sometimes the peer support needs peer support, and that is so true. You've got to pay attention to yourselves when you're taking all this in, when you're listening to other people's shit. You got to make sure that it don't weigh you down. And it can. It's so easy. And I mean, we can talk about that. It could be a whole other show in itself. You're listening to all this stuff, and if you're good at what you're doing and you're a good listener, people will seek you out, and you're taking a lot on. So be careful and pay attention to yourself on that. So, uh, but Doug, we're coming up on time, and we're pretty close here. So, I'll give you the last word, man, and I'll close it out.
Yes, this is actually how do I say this? A more difficult topic than I expected it to be to talk about, which is ironic because we're talking about talking and listening.
Right.
And it's difficult because it comes from many, many different avenues. And I was looking at one of the guys who commented on there and was former police chief, friend of ours. And I looked at, and he's a wonderful person, great in the industry, and he's just I'm a big fan. And he was a police chief. And I went, holy crap, man, that must be really difficult for a police chief once upon a time, president of an organization, a leader, a decorated leader, and then to remove yourself from that role into a, to a listening role and a role that potentially you can't fix, because that was a comment. We're just so trained to fix. We don't leave the scene. And I always said that about SWAT guys, and I'm not downplaying anybody because we're SWAT guys, but as I used to use that term, when the cops are in trouble,
Mhm.
who do they call? I used to tell this to my guys, and they go, the cops, they call SWAT. Well, when SWAT's in trouble, who do we call? We can't call the military. We're the end of the rope. And so we're used to having to fix that problem before we leave. You learn that situation probably greater than any person I know to this day. And that's just a really difficult task to adhere. So anyway, I'll say this in closing. Most importantly, thank you to all the peers that have stepped up to do a job that nobody else wants to do. That's a difficult job. Really important. Thank you to all of the clinicians out there that have come into an arena, the lion's den, as I call it. You got to be fucking insane yourself to want to be the therapist for cops. You know what I mean? Just because
Right.
I just imagine what it's like being my therapist. I mean, I guess we could ask Denise how fun that is. But thank you, because you're a lifesaver. And and I've seen the movement over the 10 years or more that I've been in this industry, and you've probably seen it as well. We've seen the roughness in the beginning, and now the acceptance of the therapists in the field, and they're doing wonderful jobs, and organizations are training them to be more culturally competent. I'm not a I that doesn't bother me. I'm not a big culturally competent guy. I just want you to be competent, you know like Chris always says, we don't care about the surgeon being a trained surgeon on cops. But thank you, and all the people out there that take the time to listen to somebody like me. Yes, I think.
Absolutely. Well said. I mirror that. I wanted to add the last part, and you stole my thunder there. It may not
Good.
just peer support people, right? It could be anybody. Anybody could approach you and encourage that. Everybody that's here and everybody that listens to our show that replays it over the next couple of weeks, uh, you know, encourage that we can all be that person. Any one of us can check on any one of us. And any one of us can be the person that another brother or sister reaches out to with something going on in the head. And we can all be good listeners and we can all support our brother and sister to get to the next minute, to the next hour, to the next day.
Yeah,
Right? It's okay to say, I don't know the answer, but I'm going to hold your hand and we're going to go shoulder to shoulder and we're going to go find Doug Mondo, Raul Rivas. We're going to find, after action. We're going to find whatever we need to find to get you the help you need. So encourage that amongst your people. And with that, thank you very much for tuning in again. And if you or anybody you know is in crisis or needs some help, our information will be in the credits. We appreciate you guys. And on behalf of all of us and Marky the boss, I appreciate you. Good night.